So till now we understood the main drivers and the functions and the role of CMSs in our programming structure. So in these driver files we saw all these folders and they contain the main driver files, and we also saw their importance. So in this video we're going to see the rest of the files that we are going to use in our project. So this INC and this source folder contains the header files and the source file respectively. So you know the importance of header and source, right? So whenever we define a function, we define them in a source file, and the respective declaration is done in the header file, right? So let us get started here. So the first one in the header is gpio.h, and its respective source file is gpio.c, which is present in this source folder. Now let us open this, and you can see that it contains a function that is mxgpio init. So it is nothing but a GPIO function for port initialization, right? So in this function you can see that this GPIOH underscore clock underscore enable, which is a function to enable clock for port H of our microcontroller. Port H contains the pins for oscillator, hence we are always going to initialize this port in our project. And whenever we use any other peripheral, then its respective port is to be initialized before using it. So we will do it from here only. And the header file, this header file contains the declaration of the file that we defined, the function that we defined here, right? The next is stm32f4 global.h and its respective source file global.c. So what this file contains is this file contains the definitions and declaration of some of the core MCU functions like bit banding, then memory protection unit MPU, then sleep mode and standby mode, all those kind of things. So these functions are being defined in this global.c file, and their declarations are done in this global.h file. Then the next is stm32f4x6 underscore hall underscore configuration file. Now you know that we are using hall drivers in our project, right? So this file defines the enabled hall modules and set some parameters. Now all the hall drivers are present in this project into this folder, right? We saw this in the previous video. But in order to use them, all these modules are to be enabled, should be enabled in this hall configuration file. Then only you will be able to use them, or else these files cannot be used in your project. So first of all, you need to enable all these modules into your project, right? So these modules can be enabled and disabled from here. So for example, this hall underscore ADC module enabled, if you comment this project, if I comment this, then this module is disabled now. And you cannot use the respective ADC headers and source from this hall drivers. So in order to use this ADC headers or source from this hall drivers, then for that you have to like enable this or uncomment this. So this is all that happens in this file. Then the next is this stm32 f4x6 underscore it dot h and its respective C file. Now this is a file for interrupt handlers. So it is the header and source files for the interrupt handlers. So this file contains the interrupt handlers for all the peripherals of this microcontroller. So as you can see that all these lines of codes are inactive as of now. That means that these all interrupts are disabled. As you can see that this is header file for timer, watchdog, ADC, right? And if you enable them, then all these interrupts will be enabled. These are basically the interrupts. So for this UART, so these are the interrupt handlers for UART. This is the interrupt handler for UART6, right? So interrupt handler for DMA. So all these kind of interrupt handlers are present, but you need to enable them also. So how to enable them? So for that, so let us take an example first of all. Let us take this UART, right? Yeah, the interrupt handlers for UART are disabled as of now. So what we have to do is we have to copy this symbol. This is known as symbol. So we need to copy this use underscore stm32f4 underscore uart. We have to copy this symbol and we have to go to the properties of the project. Into the properties, into this C++ general, then in this paths and symbols, and inside this symbols and gnu.c. So you have to add here that respective symbol and OK and apply that. So once you add this symbol, the UART will be enabled. As you can see, this code of lines are now active, and the interrupt handlers for UART will also are also active here. Right? They were inactive before that, but as you added the symbol for UART, it is active now. So now you can use the interrupt handlers for UART. So in this way, you have to operate this interrupt files. Then at last, this is stm32f4 underscore hall underscore msp dot c. Now, MSP stands for MCU support package. So this file defines all the initialization functions to configure some parameters according to user configuration like pin allocation, use of DMA and interrupts, etc. So in this also, as of now, there is only one function hall underscore MSP in it, which is by using which we are setting the interrupt priority of systic. So we have set the interrupt priority of systic to the maximum right now. So systic is because we are going to use systic in every project. We are going to enable that and we are going to use that in every project. So we have put its priority high as of now. This is all that is happening in this MSP init function. Now let us take a look at our main file. There are some parameters that we are going to use every time when we write a code. So as you can see that in the main routine there are some functions that are defined. So these functions are going to be there in every project apart from our code because these function helps us initialize our clock and other functions or other drivers that we're going to use. So for example, this hall underscore init. So as we are going to use the hall drivers, this function hall underscore init needs to be executed first of all before any function. Right? So what does this function do is it resets all the peripheral and initializes the flash interface and initializes the systic timer. Right, so this function needs to be executed in order to use the hall libraries. Then after that there is other function by the name system clock underscore config. So this function does nothing but configures your clock. So this function is defined right here before below the main routine. So we are going to use our microcontroller at this configuration only. So we have set some multipliers and dividers and prescalers for configuring the clock. So we have configured our system clock at 168 megahertz here and our APB1 clock at 84 megahertz. And after that we are executing this mx underscore GPIO init function which we saw just now. So it is because we have to enable the clock for GPIO port H. Right, so these functions are going to be present in each and every project that we take and we write the code for.